Our next presenter is Mrs. Donna Wong and Mr. Vern Hinsvark from Hawaii Thousand Friends. Mrs. Wong is the Executive Director of Hawaii Thousand Friends, a nonprofit organization with a 38-year record of involvement in the state and local government, land use and environmental issues. Mr. Hinsvark is a former member of the Kailua Neighborhood Board. He has a focus on short-term rental enforcement since 2015 and currently does research with Hawaii Thousand Friends. Today, they'll be presenting on vacation rental impacts on residential zoning. Please welcome Mrs. Donna Wong and Mr. Vern Hinsvark.
Good morning, what a great crowd. Okay, of course, housing is of interest, great interest to every one of us. We have future generations coming up and they need a place to live. But we also support our land use laws. They're there to protect our natural resources. We live on islands. So we support the Land Use Commission, we support the state land use law, we support the Hawaii State Plan that was created with the limited islands, limited resources in mind. And one of the main objectives is a direct growth policy that is to ensure that visitor facilities and destinations are carefully planned and sensitive to existing neighboring communities and related developments. And as part of the statewide planning process, county general plans are to address the unique problems and needs of each county and indicate desired population and physical development patterns for each county. So that applies statewide. And from the beginning, Oahu's general plan has had a directed growth policy. That is, we have residential zoning, industrial, and preservation zoning. And that included visitor accommodation nodes. Our planners realized that Hawaii is open for tourism 24/7, 365. And so the idea was to protect the integrity of our residential communities and our neighborhoods. You direct tourism-related facilities to these tourism nodes. And this protecting of our neighborhoods was very forward-thinking. But, and I'm gonna take a note from Paul Brubaker, don't know when this happened, but sometime, instead of following the county and planning mechanisms, Oahu has transformed from a directed growth policy to allow anything, anywhere approach. And this approach has allowed the explosion of short-term vacation rentals in residential and apartment zoning districts. And the results are devastating. If we think that this is not an issue that's well known or talked about a lot when you're looking at housing and affordable housing, but the impacts are pretty bad. This lack of enforcement of our zoning laws against the short-term vacation rentals has led to housing in residential districts ripe for speculation. The shortage of housing and high housing costs are a result of the increased speculation. A short-term rental is defined as can be rented out an entire house, one or more bedrooms in a house. And for the state and Kauai and Maui County, a short-term vacation rental is defined as renting 180 days a year or less. On Oahu, a short-term vacation rental is defined as renting for less than 30 consecutive days. The impacts of ignoring our planning, not following our direct growth policy, not enforcing laws, allowing short-term vacation rentals encroachment into residential zoning has led to 1 in 24 homes in the state is being used. That's 1 in 24. So we're looking at a shortage of 65,000. We haven't done the math to figure out what that is, but 1 in 24 homes in the state That's a lot of homes that could be on the local market and used for local residents. And on Kauai, that number is 1 in 10. For Maui County, it's a little more severe, and they're well aware of it. For Maui, it's 1 in 7. Lahaina is 1 in 3. And there are 52 homes, 52% of homes, and 60% of all condos are sold to non-residents. That's our speculation. Of the approximate 9,000 short-term vacation rentals, only 223 are legal. That's not enforcing, and that's ignoring laws. And 66% of non-residents who own Maui property, they rent out their units, but only 16.7% to residents. Okay, now I introduce Vern to follow up.
And what do we lose by these short-term rentals? Statewide, there are over 23,000 condos that are rented, over 11,000 whole houses, and almost 2,000 private rooms. That equals close to 37,000 units removed from the local housing market. In 2015, there were 17,000 short-term vacation rentals statewide. That's when I started getting involved with enforcement. In 2017, there were 23,000, and that wasn't because I didn't do a good job. An increase of 35% in 2 years. That was from an HTA report. The short-term vacation rentals in residential zoning offer enormous economic incentive to investors. A 2015 study by the Honolulu Office of Community Services found that at 80% occupancy, the average short-term vacation rental would bring in 3.5 times more revenue than a long-term rental. But they have a negative impact to the local economy. According to a San Francisco study, every housing unit withdrawn from the market to be used as a short-term vacation rental produces a net negative economic impact. Even if the unit generates host income, visitor spending, and hotel taxes every day, it is estimated that the local economy loses up to $30,000 per short-term vacation rental per year. And we see it in the costs because of our high rate of homelessness, and we have to deal with all the people that can't afford to rent houses when they are being rented out to tourists. So there are a series of solutions that can be done, and I'm sure this will lead to a lot of questions in our question and answer, but we should enforce our existing laws and pass stronger laws to shut down illegal short-term rentals. Encourage coordinated long-range directed growth planning between the counties and the state. It would be really nice if the county and state talked to each other. Do not allow short-term vacation rentals in residential and apartment zoned districts. That's for local housing. Make it illegal to advertise short-term vacation rentals that are not permitted, and require that all short-term vacation rental advertisements include a permit number. I know there's a lot of these, but these are all just a lot of ideas that we have to work with. Require that internet hosting platforms identify and remove non-compliant hosts. Treat online advertisers for what they are, hotel chains, and ban them outright in residential zones. Grant standing to local residents to enforce the laws against short-term rentals. Increase enforcement staff of the county planning departments and the state tax department. Simplify enforcement by creating a presumption that owners who advertise units without a permit are in fact operating illegally. Collect fines, do not reduce or forgive them. Oh man, more. Require short-term vacation rental platforms to verify that listings are registered before posting them, place burden of proof on the homeowner, allow inspectors to use advertisements on the internet as proof that a unit is being used as a short-term vacation rental, require short-term vacation rental permit applicants to notify neighbors within a 100-foot circumference, and provide an opportunity to contest an application. All advertising material, including websites, should include the property owner's permit number, address, and resort zoning classification. I've got a couple side notes. On 11/6 of 18, November 6th of 18, Maui passed a measure to increase the fine for operating a short-term rental without a permit from $1,000 to $20,000 per day, plus $10,000 per day for each day the unlawful operation exists. The measure passed 52 to 38%. There are steps that we can take now to increase housing for locals, while multi-year plans to build more affordable housing move ahead from idea to planning to fruition. Let's take action now. Unless Hawaii takes action against illegal short-term vacation rentals, our residential housing shortage will increase as investors convert more homes built for residents into vacation rentals. That is a given. There is a track record of that. And with that, I shall say mahalo for listening to me. Thank you. You want to go first? I'll just say once again, if we would enforce our existing laws, we will build respect for law in the state of Hawaii, and at the same time create a lot of affordable housing.
I'm a property manager, and I rent long-term rentals in my house. I rent out 3 rooms. But I have a number of friends that do short-term Airbnb type rentals. In Hawaii, the cost of living has gone up so much that many of them couldn't afford the mortgage if they didn't do that. Instead of having such a restriction allowing them to legally apply and become an permitted Airbnb, you said earlier that over 50% of the homes that are being sold are to off-island investors, and quite a few of them are just handled by a few conglomerates or whatever. Why not allow some of the people to become registered instead of having all of that detail? I mean, I already know about the one that's in place. A couple of years ago, there was one that if you didn't put in your registration number in the internet, you could be fined. But they don't seem to enforce that because you already said there's over 20,000 Airbnb or short-term rentals in the state. Allow some to be licensed to be able to do it so that they can afford to keep their homes in Hawaii, but make it restricted to only those that live in the house instead of what you have now.
Well, in 1989, the City Council passed a moratorium on allowing any more vacation rentals, short-term vacation rentals in residential neighborhoods. There was a moratorium. Anybody could understand what moratorium means. It's a cap, no more. That was never enforced. So without enforcing that law, or even proposing something that would be enforceable, that we never had that discussion. That had to get really, really bad before communities like Maui, they took that drastic step before we had started even having that discussion. And that was the communities themselves. And then you come out with the city's bill, a council bill, and then it's not a discussion, it's a whole debate. So in answer to your question, we've never even had that real full discussion without it being combative. And that's what's missing. We should stop right now and start talking about the impacts of speculation, the impacts of internet providers, all of that, and maybe some of the benefits that are needed for renting short term. But without that discussion, I don't see it stopping, and it's just going to be a continual battle.
And I want to add a little bit to that. Currently, the bill that's before the city council is making a 1% of all housing in a district available for rentals. And what they want to do is they want to give these permits to the lucky people that get these permits. No one else will be able to get one afterwards. And there are more sensitive ways that you could do this, smarter ways, where you could have a certain amount of permits and you would have to have somebody to assign them. There would have to be a lottery. If rental time was 2 years or 2.5 years, then someone else would get a shot at making this money. And there's no avenue for allowing someone who actually has a hardship to ask for a permit. And that should be built into any law. Thank you.
My name is Louisa, and I have a question about elderly residents that has already paid off their mortgages that are able to make an income with these vacation rentals. I want to hear your position on that, because it is a privilege and an opportunity for them. I have a friend that moves into the YMCA for about 3 months a year in order to rent her oceanfront condo out. And that's how she manages to make a living. Is there a way that we could perhaps make a distinction with non-resident property owners and local property owners? Because I believe they are off-island property owners. There's one person that has 56 houses or units that they rent out as vacation rentals, and they are not part of Hawaii at all. Your comment, please.
Okay, I will say to that, I do agree with you, but we have to set up a mechanism to be able to, at one hand, control the proliferation of the rentals in each neighborhood. And there is a method to do that. And then there would have to be a board created and the permits from rentals could support that board. And that board would then be able to say, okay, we have this many permits for this neighborhood, which is hopefully developed by the neighborhoods. And they can reserve some. If someone comes up and they do have a hardship that they can no longer afford, then the board could make an exception to that. But the idea, what the city is proposing now, is all these permits are given away. This is what we did in 1989. We said, okay, all these people that are doing this illegally, we're going to give permits to, and nobody else can get one. And now they're saying the exact same thing. And we have to be more sensible about what we're doing. And I agree. Elderly people living in a house that are having trouble making ends meet, then yes, they should get support, because we don't want to have to move them to a rest home. My parents both died, and they luckily got to die in the house they lived in. But it's just not right to stick old people into homes if they've worked their whole lives to have a home. All they need is the assistance. And if that assistance comes from a short-term rental or a nurse living with them, those types of things, they can be dealt with. This is what lawmaking is about. But we're not making laws, we're just reacting. And I better stop. Thank you very much.